Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51 Centre show about women reshaping our world coming up. And with growing anger over misogyny in the Australian Parliament, women's rights dominate the election campaign as Australia heads to the polls later this month with a record number of female candidates standing as independents. Also, the Taliban has ordered women to cover their faces when in public while encouraging the use of the burqa. Plus, fury over the fact that only 5 out of 22 directors competing at this year's Cannes Film Festival are women. This despite a pledge by organisers to improve gender representation. I'll be talking shortly to talent agent Solène Edouard. But first, more than a year ago, Australia witnessed numerous protests across the nation as women took to the streets in anger at the federal government. It followed shocking allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment from inside their nation's parliament. As a result, women's rights have become an issue in the country's upcoming national election. Prime Minister Scott Morrison's Conservative government is performing badly in the polls, particularly among female voters, with a record number of women also standing as independent candidates, as James Vecina reports.
Campaigning is in full swing as polling day approaches in Australia. Allegra Spender's one of the newcomers. She's decided to enter politics as an independent candidate, saying it's time for change.
I think women are angry, and I think women feel that they need representation. That when I look at Parliament and go, wow, this is the culture that they have, that both parties, and it's not just the Liberal Party, that both parties have created in Parliament. I say that we need urgent change.
Like her, 48 other female candidates have launched independent campaigns, more than double that in the past election. With over 80% of men making up the current Liberal National Coalition, they're hoping to gain parliamentary seats and bring women's rights to the forefront of Australian politics.
In the last year, we've also seen gender become a prominent issue, particularly with Brittany Higgins' allegations, Grace Tame as Australian of the Year, and the protest movement that this sparked around Australia.
Our next speaker is the CEO.
This wave of protests erupted in March last year after Brittany Higgins said she was raped inside Parliament while working in a minister's office. Other allegations of sexual assault have since emerged. And while Prime Minister Scott Morrison went on to commission a report into the workplace culture of the House, which found out that a third of people working there had been sexually harassed, polls show that he's struggling to appeal to female voters.
I said, I can't see that they're doing a lot. Like there's been a lot of female incidents that have been covered up in the construction industry, in the mining industry. I believe that a true leader is a honest leader, and he doesn't tell the truth.
Over the past 20 years, Australia's dropped from 15th to 50th place in the world for parliamentary gender diversity. The election will take place on the 21st of May.
To Afghanistan now, and the Taliban has imposed further restrictions on Afghan women regarding how they dress in public. It's the first time where a woman risks criminal punishment over a violation of the dress code since the Taliban seized power last August. They're also encouraging the return of the infamous burqa, a full body veil with just an opening for the eyes. Lauren Bairstecker has more.
Raising their voices against Taliban oppression. Dozens of Afghan women took to the streets of Kabul to denounce a recent decree forcing them to fully cover up their faces and bodies.
We want to be seen as individuals. We want to be seen as human beings, not as slaves imprisoned in the corner of the house.
The controversial edict requires women to fully cover their faces in public.
Women who are not too old or too young must cover their face in order to avoid provocation when meeting men.
This means headscarves, even when paired with a face mask, are now considered too revealing. Taliban authorities strongly recommend women wear the burqa, an integral full-body veil that leaves only a slit for the eyes. The decree also encourages women to stay at home as much as possible. It was the latest in a series of restrictive policies implemented by the Taliban since their return to power.
Ever since the Taliban came back, all their projects have been against women. They want to limit and eliminate women from the field of society and politics.
Upon seizing power last year, Taliban leaders were adamant they had changed. But in recent months, they imposed a series of new edicts and laws that have severely restricted women's freedoms, limiting their ability to travel, to pursue a secondary education, or find employment in the public sector.
Here in France, the red carpet once again is soon to be rolled out for the Cannes Film Festival, but the celebratory mood has been somewhat overshadowed with much fury over the announcement that only 5 female directors out of 22 are contenders in this year's main competition. In the wake of the Me Too movement, Cannes became the first international film festival to sign a gender parity pledge in 2018. This after 82 women, including the then Cannes jury president, Kate Blanchett, and French director Agnès Varda, staged a protest on the red carpet over the industry's treatment of women. Joining me now in the studio is Solène Edouard, a French talent agent who's also a fervent activist in promoting diversity in the world of cinema. Solène, thank you so much for coming in. You must be furious that once again we only have just 5 women out of 22 directors being selected for this year's competition, despite this historic pledge being signed by the festival 4 or so years ago.
Yes, we were really hoping that it would be much better by now. I'm sure you remember we talked 5 years ago and we had the same conversation. And then we were extremely angry at the lack of female representation on the selection, the official selection of the Cannes Film Festival. So yes, it's really a pity that we're still there, especially after all the protests, all the work that has been done, including the work on the main film festival at Cannes and the signing of the pledge. I think, though, that things are changing. And we are not where we were 5 years ago when you and I had this conversation. I think things have evolved, especially in other festivals, maybe not the Cannes, maybe not the Class A international festival, but things have been really evolving. Things have been changing also in the industry, the way we talk. This is an issue we're talking about. This is an issue that people are aware of, and we have data now that we didn't have 5 years ago, thanks to all the great work of all the women that have been working on this issue, actually.
But as you and I know, the French have an aversion to quotas, and that historic gender parity pledge back in 2018 did not insist on quotas. It just said there was a need for gender parity. So in your opinion, did it go far enough, or to really bring about substantial change, do you need to impose quotas?
Do we need quotas? And I think at the moment where the festival signed this pledge for more parity, it was hard to, this is, as you said, something that is very hard in France, the notion of quota, mostly because if we had quota, we can only have them on the gender one. We cannot have other kind of quotas. We cannot discriminate, based on religion or origin and etc. This is not something that the Republic would allow. So this is difficult to talk about quota in France in general. And I think at the time where the pledge was signed, we were trying to have something done, and the only thing we could do at this time was that. And that was, our first step. So there's something that, is getting close to the idea of quota, which is a bonus for the producers of movie for which the artistic team would be of equal gender. So in France, you have a system by which you get some financing, some public financing for your movie, and the amount that you would get 15% bonus on the amount you would be able to get if you reach some equality on the artistic team, meaning, your key 6th player on your movie being your director, your director of photography, the writers, and etc. If half of those people actually are women, then you could get some actual credits. So we're starting to get some data and also some numbers in there to try to push this.
And certainly going on from that, we had women making some small gains. We had Jane Campion winning the Best Director at the last Oscars for The Power of the Dog, and Julia Ducournau for last year's Palme d'Or. But these are still very small victories indeed. But what has changed since 2017, in your opinion?
You know, I looked again at the interview we had 5 years ago, and I was telling you, yes, my job on a daily basis is really to support the women, for them to gain confidence, so that they're comfortable getting at the table. I don't need to do this with the millennials at all. They are coming and they say, I want representation and I want to make movies and this is how I want to do them. And I know, I'm going to be able to do this. And I know I have, a role to play in this industry, even if the people who have been there for 20, 25, 30 years don't think that I do. And this I see very, very clearly. And I think this is what we need to encourage.
And it gives you hope as a result.
Of course. I'm so happy every time, one of them knocks on the door or sends an email, call up and say, well, actually, I need representation because this is what I want to do. And I think this is the kind of movement that we need to continue to accompany. We need to help those younger, women who are not afraid of really claiming a seat that no one wants to give to them.
Solène, I'm very sorry to say we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all for now. You can keep up with the 51% on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter. Plus, you can catch our previous programs on the France 24 website. So until our next show, bye for now.